Welcome to Game Honest's Weekly, your one-stop shop for video game news, keeping up with the biggest stories so you don't have to. I'm your host, Edwin Garcia, and today we are talking about the studio behind Cyberpunk 2077 becoming victim of hacking, E3 going digital, and Post Malone headlining a Pokemon concert. All these stories and so much more on today's episode. One thing I do want to mention before we get started is I am recording and doing the editing on Thursday, so anything that comes out on Friday or Saturday morning, I'm not gonna have in here. So if you're wondering like why I don't talk about certain things or why I didn't update things, that is why I'm recording early, because I'm gonna be actually busy this weekend. I'm taking the time off from making content, spending it with my partner, celebrating Valentine's Day. So that's what's going on in my world and why things will be a little bit different this week, but I really want to bring you guys an episode still. So yeah, thanks for being here and listening/watching. Starting off with CDPR getting hacked. This is something that they talked about publicly on Twitter, and they posted this in the context of being an important update, and I will read what they have written in the screenshot that they shared from these hackers. And they posted this out on the 8th saying, "Yesterday we discovered that we have become a victim of a targeted cyber attack due to which some of our internal systems have been compromised. An unidentified actor gained unauthorized access to our internal network, collected certain data belonging to CD Projekt Capital Group, and left a ransom note, the content of which we released to the public. Although some devices in our network have been encrypted, our backups remain intact. We have already secured our IT infrastructure and begun restoring the data. We will not give in to the demands nor negotiate with the actor, being aware that this may eventually lead to the release of the compromised data. We are taking necessary steps to mitigate the consequences of such a release, in particular by approaching any parties that may be affected due to the breach. We are still investigating the incident. However, at this time, we can confirm that, to our best knowledge, the compromised systems did not contain any personal data of our players or users of our services. We have already approached the relevant authorities, including law enforcement and the President of Personal Data Protection Office, as well as IT forensic specialists, and we will closely cooperate with them in order to fully investigate this incident." They also include the note which says, "You have been epically pwned." Actually, it says "your have been epically pwned." There's a typo in it, which I found kind of odd. Anyway, it continues to say, "We have dumped full copies of the source codes from your Perforce server for Cyberpunk 2077, Witcher 3, Gwent, and the unreleased version of Witcher 3. We have also dumped all your documents relating to accounting, administration, legal, HR, investor relations, and more. Also, we have encrypted all your servers, but we understand that you can most likely recover from backups. If we will not come to an agreement, then your source codes will be sold or leaked online and your documents will be sent to our contacts in gaming and journalism. The shitter even more, and people will see how shitty your company functions. Investors will lose trust in your company and the stock will dive even lower. You have 48 hours to contact us." And continuing with this story, we have reporting from Nick Stat over at The Verge. The stolen material did begin circulating, and Stat writes, "On Wednesday, leaks of potentially legitimate source code information started appearing on online forums, as noted on Twitter by the cybersecurity account VX Underground. This initial leak was believed to include source code of the CDPR's virtual card game, Gwent, while VX Underground disclosed that auctions for the more valuable source code were happening on a hacking forum known as Exploit. A spokesperson from a cybersecurity firm, Kela, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, told The Verge as follows, quote, "We do believe this is a real auction by a real seller who accesses the data. The seller offers to use a guarantor, and he allows only those who have a deposit to participate, a tactic that is used by many sellers to show that they are serious and to ensure that no scam will occur." And a guarantor is just a person who promises to pay a borrower's debt in the event that the borrower defaults on the loan they have or the obligation they have. This cybersecurity firm said the auction offered source code files for CDPR game releases, including The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, Thronebreaker, The Witcher Tales spin-off, and the recently released Cyberpunk 2077. And then still at The Verge, John Porter writes about how the data has reportedly been sold. And that selling price was anywhere from 1 million to 7 million, as 1 million was sort of the minimum and 7 million was the buy it now, which is kind of bizarre to think of a 7 million being a buy it now item, because for me, the only auctions I've ever done were like eBay for like very like cheaply priced things that were obtained legally. This is pretty wild, really unfortunate situation, regardless of how you feel about CDPR. It's just really messed up. And I really feel for this team who has just gone through hell in relation to everything related to this game. It's just incredibly unfortunate. And speaking of unfortunate situations, the COVID-19 pandemic is still very much with us. And as a result, E3 seems to be going digital for 2021. They haven't officially announced their plans other than a cheeky tweet acknowledging that their rough draft, or to some degree what they have planned, has been shared via Video Games Chronicle, who claims they got a hold of pitch documents that were sent to publishers. And here are the bullet points from that reporting. There will be 3 days of live streaming from June 15th to the 17th. Multiple 2-hour keynote sessions from game partners, an award show, a June 14th preview night, and other small streams from game publishers, influencers, and media partners. There will also be media previews the week before, sort of leading up, plus demos released on consumer platforms. The ESA also says it will allow partner companies to remotely stream playable demos to media across thousands of scheduled meetings with one-to-one assistance from developers, which the article mentions how this is really similar to how previews were done during the year of COVID as well, so it's sort of familiar territory. And VGC does point out that E3 2021 plans still require the approval of ESA's membership, which is made up of industry's biggest companies who have significant influence over the direction of the show. So this may be what they're pitching, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's exactly how things will shake out, because one, plans change, and then two, other people are involved in that decision making. It's not just, hey, here's what's happening. It's sort of a group decision. So we'll have to wait and see what the official plans are. I don't think anyone was expecting E3 to be a physical event this year, given the situation of the world and also the situation of E3 kind of struggling to maintain its presence and sort of losing its grip that it had on the industry. I do think for a lot of reasons, the world we're going into, this like post-pandemic, when we ever get there, the post-pandemic world is going to be a lot different than it was pre-pandemic. And I think one of those things is going to be the way content and how we make content and consume content has changed. But it's kind of weird too, because I do think there is like going to be that thirst for public in-person events. Everyone's so desperate to connect that I do think there'll be sort of an influx, but at the same time, I think we've realized that it's not always necessary to have these kind of events. And obviously it's a money thing too, how much it costs to actually put on something like this. Are companies gonna want to spend the money that they were able to save previously? I'm not sure that they are, and I think a lot of companies have decided to step away from E3 for that very financial reason. Personally, I'm excited at the prospect of a digital E3. It's not nearly as cool as a physical E3. And I even thought that before I ever went to an E3. I just think there's something about what that space creates for everyone that is interested in keeping up with games media. Even if you're just a fan, like that was always such an exciting time, that E3 season, watching the conferences. I do think that online it loses a lot of its pop, but at least this is something. Moving on, we do have a bit of a darker story. Riot Games CEO is sued for sexual harassment. This comes from Jason Kobler, Matthew Galt, and Emmanuel Mayberg over at Vice. I do want to give a bit of a content warning for this, since some of the language from the complaint could be triggering for some, so this is your time to pause or skip ahead if you would rather not hear the specific details of this account. And for this part, I'm just going to read directly from this piece from Vice, which goes as follows. Former Riot Games employee Sharon O'Donnell has filed a sexual harassment lawsuit against the company and its CEO, Nicolo Laurent, who she alleges asked her to come over to his house when his wife was away, discussed his underwear size with her, and told her that his wife was jealous of beautiful women, according to a copy of the complaint obtained by Vice Games. The alleged harassment included Laurent commenting on O'Donnell's physical appearance, telling her to be more feminine and to watch her tone, telling female employees to handle COVID stress by having children, telling plaintiff that he really was a size extra large, but that he just liked a tight fit, putting his arm around her and asking her to travel with him, asking her if she could handle him when they were alone at his house, and telling plaintiff she could come over to his house while his wife was away, thereby implying they should have sex, the suit states. According to the suit, she refused these advances, was punished at work, and was eventually fired in June of 2020. Riot did reach out to Vice to push back against that, essentially stating that the harassment, or the alleged harassment at least, had nothing to do with the firing, that this came after a lot of different complaints and sit-downs and workshops to improve. Riot also told Vice Laurent is working like normal as these claims are being investigated. And included in this Vice article, it's just impossible to discuss this without thinking of Kotaku's reporting about the culture of sexism at Riot Games. So this really comes in the context of all of that and sort of adds to the credence of it, but also the continued existence and prevalence of these issues at Riot Games. And just honestly, this is a really difficult story to discuss. Obviously, I hope that change comes from this, but it feels like every week there are these different stories of harassment and exploitation or various forms of gatekeeping in the industry, and it's just really hard to even bother to be a part of something that's so toxic. Fighting to be part of something that so clearly doesn't love you back. It's just incredibly painful, and I really feel for the people involved in these situations who are hurt by it. And just, I mean, this industry is just so difficult already. The idea of having to deal with harassment along with that is just it's too much to bear, honestly. And I wish I had something more positive to say, but I honestly just don't. And I can only hope that the story that has already happened at Riot and continues to happen at Riot eventually becomes a turning point for the company and that we see real change happen. But, you know, honestly, it's hard to feel like that's going to be the case because so much evidence points to the contrary. And continuing on that theme of turning points, EA is deciding the fate of Anthem. This comes from Jason Schreier over at Bloomberg. And essentially, according to Bloomberg, EA will hold a meeting this week to determine the game's fate. In this meeting, it'll be executives reviewing the latest version of Anthem Next, and essentially deciding whether or not they're going to expand the team or just ditch the project entirely. And anything can work if you do, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily should. I'd personally be really surprised if they continue with this, but maybe they see a value that I can't see. Just because this isn't being talked about in the discourse of games media and among fans doesn't mean that it isn't a success, or at least showing signs of the potential to be a success in the future. So stay tuned for more info on that. On to something a bit lighter, The Last of Us has some casting updates. This comes from Deadline. Bella Ramsey will play Ellie, and Pedro Pascal will play Joel in The Last of Us HBO series. Not a whole lot to say on this one. These are really awesome actors, really established, fantastic careers. Pedro Pascal specifically already played that escort mission role, as many people have already joked about, with a powerful child in The Mandalorian. So I imagine those skills kind of transfer over nicely. And frankly, I'm just really excited for this series. I don't necessarily think it's for sure going to be good, because going from games to a different medium is just kind of not necessarily automatically a smooth transition. We see that tension with games going to movies all the time, and it could definitely be the case that this falls flat, but I'm just ready to dig into more Last of Us. I honestly became a bit of a Last of Us stan after playing the first and second game just months apart. I adore that world. It's gruesome, it's gritty. I'm excited. I just want to see what it's like. It's already a very story-driven experience, so it's like, what if it was just all story and you sit back, you relax, you enjoy it? And speaking of things you can be enjoying, there's going to be a virtual concert with Post Malone, a virtual Pokemon concert with Post Malone. This is happening on February 27th, 7 p.m. ET. Mark your calendars. This is, of course, well, maybe not of course, but it is to celebrate Pokemon's 25th anniversary. This is part of that P25 music program that I mentioned a few weeks ago on the show, where I brought up Katy Perry teaming up with Pokemon. This is in that theme. This is that same series. And I did ask y'all who you wanted to see contribute to this series. For me, I want Foo Fighters. I still want Foo Fighters. I don't think any of you requested or predicted Post Malone. So again, let me know in the comments, on social, or via email who you want to see for this P25 music program, because I really wasn't, after they mentioned Katy Perry, I wasn't expecting them to go from Katy Perry to Post Malone, but I'm excited about it. Also, please check out the announcement video or the video version of this podcast, because you get to see an animated Post Malone in all of his horrific glory. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You have to look at it. You need to know what this looks like. And another way that Pokemon is celebrating its 25th anniversary is with special edition McDonald's Booster Pack trading cards that are included in Happy Meals at select McDonald's that are participating in this celebration. Each of these packs includes 4 exclusive cards, with the opportunity to collect cards featuring all 24 first partner Pokemon from the many regions in the Pokemon world, plus Pikachu. There are standard and foil versions of each card, and all the cards have the Pokemon 25th logo on them, and in total there are 50 cards. So y'all already know where this is going. Scalpers, people going up there, buying all the Happy Meals, and then just selling them on eBay, which it sounds kind of ridiculous, but that is the situation. It is unsurprising. Pokemon stuff is super popular, and Pokemon fans must have it, which means there's also a demand for it, and where there's a demand, people are like, hey, what if I could be that supply? And hence is how we ended up in this situation. I did go with my roommate to try to get one, and they were sold out at our local McDonald's. I do know that Casey DeFreitas of IGN's NVC was able to get one, but she had called once and they didn't have any, and then she had to call again. And when she did, they were like, oh, well, how many do you want? Because, like, they were sort of, I think, trying to limit them at that point, saying that, like, someone came in earlier and bought, like, 300 of them. So, yeah, there are people out there going really hard on those Pokemon cards. Not to mention there are people, I'm sure, that are just trying to buy multiples because they want to collect as many of the cards as they can. So a lot of Happy Meals are being sold. Not sure how many are actually being sold to the children they're intended for, but it's a thing that's happening. For me, I am kind of torn on this. Like, I sort of do want this Pokemon thing, but at the same time, I'm just tired. Like, I love my, like, random garbage, and I have, like, some of the cards from, like, the Detective Pikachu movie, and I do love Pokemon, but, like, at a certain point, like, I just get exhausted with the rat race of it. Burger King has these Mario toys, too, and, like, oh, I like Luigi's Mansion, do I want this toy? But it's like, you know what? I'm just sort of stepping away from the fast food market of trying to get these different collectibles from children's meals. Like, I've opted out of doing it. I'm not participating in it. But let me know if y'all managed to get your hands on any of these, and if so, what you got. Also, continuing with a story from an earlier episode we have an update on the PogChamp situation in relation to the PogChamp emote on Twitch, and a very quick shortened version of that if you're not familiar with what any of those words mean. An emote is kind of like an emoji that you can use on Twitch. PogChamp is an icon that is very popular and famous on Twitch. The person that was originally PogChamp had some problematic statements in relation to the Capitol, so they got pulled from being PogChamp. They were doing a rotation of a new PogChamp person every day to sort of pass the clout around, essentially, and try to, highlight more creators on Twitch. That, of course, was met with a lot of those creators getting harassed because internet. And now Twitch has decided that all of us are invited to decide what the future of hype looks like, and you can tune in and vote live on February 12th, Friday, February 12th at 12 p.m. PT. Again, I'm guessing by the time this airs, we will actually already know what the result of that is, but I am recording early since I'm taking the weekend off, so welcome into our new PogChamp, I assume? But the opposite of welcoming is how the co-creator of Terraria felt in relation to Google. Terraria is now canceled from being on Google Stadia. This comes over from Polygon, specifically Owen S. Good over at Polygon, who mentions how Andrew Sprinks, the co-creator of Terraria, was locked out of his Google accounts for 3 weeks, and after getting what he called the runaround, he decided that he didn't want the game to be involved at all anymore, which is pretty wild. It's one of the few times where you can have an issue with a company and actually sort of do something about it. Like, usually it's just like, oh, well, I mean, it sucks, but in this case, they were like, I'm not gonna be involved with my work, with what you're doing, because I think you don't do what you do well. It's pretty wild, and this comes after last week's announcement of Stadia shutting down its internal studio, so it's sort of just been a bad press, bad time for what's starting to have looked like just a bad idea for Stadia. And continuing with bad news, PS5 controllers might be drifting. Some people are having drift. There's a little bit of drift going on. This comes over from Ari Notice over at Kotaku. I do want to say that it's not time to panic yet. I don't think this is nearly as widespread enough to warrant any panic, but I did want to draw a little bit of attention to it. So they explored what the situation is, and after a long time of being on hold, they wrote, I was told that DualSense Drift is covered under warranty. You will, however, have to pay for shipping your controller to a Sony repair center, a cost that varies based on the number of factors, including location and total weight of the package. But Sony apparently covers the return shipping, but they don't recoup what you paid for that first shipping. And it is worth noting that the DualSense's haptic feedback is made by the same company of the Switch's HD rumble, so I wonder if there's like something in the water over there. Like, I don't know, that probably isn't even close to what's the case, but it is interesting drawing that kind of comparison point, both with the technological marvel of what the DualSense does, but also with the potential problems of what I think of when I think of the Joy-Con. But again, it's not time to panic yet. Things seem to be overall fine. Personally, my controllers have been working perfectly since launch, and I did play my PS5 super heavily when it first came out. I do know at least one of my Twitch viewers did say they had issues with the triggers. The adaptive triggers no longer having that responsiveness they initially had after like playing the hell out of Astro's Playroom, a game where you're really taking full advantage of all of the DualSense's features. So definitely some things do happen, and we're still in the early life of the PS5 as well. So again, don't panic, just something to sort of, keep an eye on, see how things develop, especially as more PS5s hopefully get out into the wild. And now on to game events, releases, and updates. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart finally has a release date. That's June 11th. It's gonna be a Ratchet summer, y'all. I'm excited for it. I've been looking forward to this game. I think it's really going to be a breath of fresh air into the franchise, a franchise that I personally feel like has grown a bit stale, but that I did love. So I'm really excited to see what this next gen adventure looks like. And I just want to say this was supposed to be launch window of the PS5. This is definitely not PS5 launch window, but I want to know from y'all, how long is a launch window to all of you? For me, it's got to be like a max 3 or 4 months. Like that's as much, like a quarter is kind of my willingness to extend, and that's basically it. But really, I think a launch window would need to be like 1 to 2 months, but I could go up to 3 to 4. But the amount of time it will be by the time we hit the summer, no, that's not a window. That's not the launch window. But you know what? That's okay, because the summer is not that far away. I can wait. I'm just glad it has a release date, and hopefully it doesn't get delayed. The Kingdom Hearts series is coming to PC for the first time on March 30th, so if for some reason you didn't play them and were waiting to play them on PC, you can. If that's like, if that person exists, they are in for a treat. I don't know how widespread that is, but Kingdom Hearts. And Crash 4 It's About Time is coming to Switch on March 12th. I adore this game. I still haven't actually beaten it. I'm right at the end. I've been playing it co-op. They have a pass the controller integrated co-op function in there. It's fantastic. I'm really glad it's on Switch. I figured this would happen since the Insane Trilogy is on Switch. It seemed like it'd only be a matter of time, but hey, that time is really, really soon. It's March 12th. Get excited. You need to get this game. I didn't actually like the Insane Trilogy. I felt like the hitboxes felt off. Like, I just didn't enjoy it. It felt too gruesome. Crash 4 is really challenging, if you want to go for like getting all the boxes or just give it a really good go, but it feels so fair. It's just so well designed. I think it was my favorite platformer of last year. Get this game. It's fantastic. Maquette will launch on PS4, PS5, and PC on March 2nd. This is a first-person puzzle game set in a recursive world where players simultaneously experience the life cycle of a loving relationship. It's developed by Graceful Decay and published by Annapurna Interactive, so naturally, I'm about it. I vibe with anything that Annapurna publishes. I don't like everything they end up publishing, but I will at least give it a chance because it's kind of in my wheelhouse. Their stuff that they put out really aligns with my tastes, so I'm into this. It looks really gorgeous if you're seeing the video on the YouTube version, or if not, just look up the trailer. It looks beautiful. And the stuff it's doing with like space and sizing is kind of giving me Superliminal vibes in terms of puzzle solving, and that's a game that I really enjoyed. So yeah, I'm into this. I'm excited about it. Update-wise, Stardew Valley, local co-op update, is now on consoles. So that's really cool. I actually haven't spent much time at all with Stardew Valley. I played like an hour and I was sort of overwhelmed by all the systems, but having spent so much time in Animal Crossing after that experience and with this co-op update, I kind of want to go back. Like, I do already have it on Switch, so I might go ahead and just like restart my farm. And for more warm fuzzy sim updates, Spiritfarer has a post-launch content roadmap. I won't go fully into it because I think some of it does get into spoiler territory, but it has stuff like quality of life updates, story content, improved co-op, new boat buildings, collectibles, recipes, resources, a new island, new spirits, a new event. So there's a lot going on in that game to be checking out in 2021. And onto the For the Free section. If you have Nintendo Online, you have access to those NES and SNES games, and there are going to be more ones added. For the Super NES, we have Doomsday Warrior, Psycho Dream, and Prehistorik Man, and for the NES, we have Fire and Ice. Now, as far as these releases, so just to kind of preface, my boyfriend is not a fan of retro games, and not even a fan of slightly older games, very much of the mind that old games are old. That's something I totally disagree with. Like, I love my old games, I love retro stuff, I think there's so much value there. However, I have my limit, and Nintendo continues to not care about that limit. Now, in defense of these games, I have not personally played them, but also, why would I? I've never felt like anyone has pushed me to play these as games I need to play. Nintendo continues to offer scraps for this service. It is such an unappealing service that I just happen to have because I get to play Splatoon. So I kind of need the service for Splatoon, but it just continues to disappoint. I will say I have enjoyed the game releases, like the exclusive to the service game releases, like Tetris 99 is great, but man, this just isn't, it's not very good. It's very much just dumpster diving through the download section. I don't like it. And for the shut up and take my money section, this was highlighted over at The Verge, but there is a Gigantamax Meowth Pokemon plush, 65 inches tall, $300, sold out currently. And they have pictures of a woman holding this Gigantamax Meowth and standing up, like holding it while you're standing up. It's like, okay, that's pretty solid. But when she sits down and cradles it and like the lower portion of its body just sort of dangles there, it's really quite disturbing, but I still find myself wanting this because I just love gigantic Pokemon plushes. Also, I just realized, since it's 65 inches tall, which is just under 5.5 feet when propped up, this Gigantamax Meowth is larger than I am. It is 1/20th scale version of the Gigantamax Meowth from Pokemon Sword and Shield, by the way, for context. So if you're into gigantic plushes, maybe like keep an eye on when they do the restock, if they do a restock. I'm also shocked this thing sold out. How many did they have? How did it already sell out? How many people bought this? Like, I need to know. So let me know if you too are obsessed with gigantic Pokemon plushes, but that's about all of the stories we have for this week's episode. Thank y'all so much for listening, for watching, for rocking with me. Please leave me a review on any podcast service that you use or all the podcast services that you can possibly gain access to, because it helps a whole lot. And of course, a special thank you to folks over on Patreon who help make this show possible. You too can head to patreon.com and support. That's patreon.com/GameOnasis. Also, I do want to highlight that I did just launch my merch store, which is also made possible because of Patreon. That link is going to be in the description and in the show notes. Go check it out. There's a bunch of different ways to support, so that might be a way you want to do it. Maybe pour yourself a cup of coffee in a mug, put on a sweater. There's a lot of cool stuff there and some amazing designs by really talented artists. So yeah, those are my plugs. Go check that out, and I will see y'all here next time. Bye.